Let's call the December 10th Planning and Zoning Regular Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening, everyone. Let's start with roll call tonight, please.
Stephenson?
Here.
Schlonhauer?
Here.
Walton?
Here.
Wilhelm?
Here. All right. Ceremonies, announcements, appointments, or presentations. Anything tonight, Mr. Manley?
Yeah, there's a few things to bring up. One is we will be sending out a housing needs survey that you should see be sent out here soon, that you'll get notice on that. Additionally, just for a heads up, on January 27th, there'll be a housing needs presentation workshop. You'll also probably get notice on that here in the near future. Additionally, there is on January 14th, you may have got wind that we're looking at doing a workshop evening. We have no public hearing scheduled for that night. There is a couple items. They could be both lengthy, and I was talking with Chris here. One of them is the impact fee update. The other one is some land use training. And so we have a couple decisions to have on that. Would be, should we break them up together? They probably might be about 4.5 hours to do all in one night. So it could be a lengthy night. So we could just get it all out. It'd be a lot of training for one night. Or do we figure out ways to break that up and create some special meetings and break it up? We don't necessarily have to have a decision tonight. We could, like with the other one, send out an email for you guys so you guys can choose your preferences on that if you would like that.
Yeah, I think let's just send an email out and get everybody's feedback that way.
That's
Perfect.
January 14th?
Yeah, January 14th.
Okay.
So that's it for as far as announcements on that section.
The housing needs survey, is that going?
It'll be citywide. It'll be on our
Citywide.
website. We'll be getting it out to people. It'll be for the community. We'll probably send it out for staff too, and get as many people possible to
Perfect.
fill out that survey.
Perfect. All right. Any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, there is. So under the public hearing section 4, the action item C, the Echo Estates Annexation Subdivision file numbers ANNX 24.5 and SUBD 24.4, there was some not issues in the noticing, more or less the applicant and their representative, for whatever reason there may be, did not get notice of it, and so therefore, since they were not prepared, requested that we remove that and come back at a later date. So.
And that just happened today, so we probably don't have a later date yet.
We don't have a later date. They did allude to the fact that it's more like March or April is what they're looking at. The applicant alluded to the fact they would like to have an opportunity to potentially reach and discuss the development or what they intend to do with some of the surrounding neighbors before they come forward. So,
Gotcha.
so it'll be all re-noticed, a new public hearing, and everything that will go along with that.
Okay. So just in case anybody didn't hear that, this is item C under action items, the Echo Estate Annexation and Subdivision it's canceled for tonight. It'll be rescheduled. They're looking at March or April, but it'll be re-noticed just like it was. So if anybody's in the audience for that one, that will not be done tonight. All right. Anything else there?
Nope, that is it.
Declaration of conflict, ex parte contacts, and site visits. Counselors, or commissioners, excuse me. Nothing to be said. Did we notice that Chris Schreiber showed up on the attendance? Got
Slid
it.
in.
Here.
Sorry about that.
You're good, all right. Can we do the consent calendar now, please?
Yeah, we have a few on this. We got action item A is the meeting minutes from November 12th, 2024. We have item B, which is the Bogie Subdivision Reason Decision file number SUBD 24-1. We have the Killdeer Annexation, item C is the Killdeer Annexation Zoning Recommendation file number ANNX 24-4. We also have the item D, which is the Early Dawn and Zorros Annexation Zoning Recommendation file number ANNX 24-1. There is Action item C, Poleline and Zorros Annexation Zoning Recommendation, file number ANNX 24-2. And action item F, which is the Landmark Place Subdivision Reason Decision, file number SUBD 24-3.
Okay. Any questions from commission members? I'd like to make a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second.
and a couple seconds. Okay, roll call, please.
Walton,
Yes.
Wilhelm,
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Schotthauer,
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on the agenda tonight. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak tonight on an item that's not on the agenda for tonight? Okay, all right. Seeing none, we'll move on to our public hearings. If you're wishing to testify for any of the hearings, the paperwork's in the back. Please bring that up front here. And at that time, we'll get your time to speak. Let's see. First public hearing tonight is the Crown Reserve Subdivision, file number SUBD-24-5. And we'll open the public hearing.
Evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, presenting the Crown Reserve SUBD-24-5. The owner is Jacqueline Land Company, and the applicant who's representing tonight is Whipple Consulting Engineers. They're requesting the approval of the proposed subdivision on approximately 37.67 acres. This is of a larger 83.88 acre site or parcel, and this phase of it would be 148 lots. The reason 37.67 is underlined, they originally came forward with their proposal at 35.55 acres, just about, and there was a revision to their subdivision plan that increased it to 37.67. Still the same amount of lots and everything, just some of the lot sizes changed slightly. I believe they got slightly larger, but I'll let the applicant go into that a little bit more. But that's why the noticing time frame sent out to the mailers for 35.55, or the staff report, and the PowerPoint here is 37.67. So if you see that discrepancy, that's why. There is a revision to the staff report that's needed, that was provided. So the condition 6 within the subdivision staff report will need to be removed as advised by legal. So basically it talks about putting in the CC&Rs some language, which was advised that we can't really do. So we're going to have to nix that condition when you guys make your motion tonight to make sure that condition 6 is removed from that. Any questions real quick on that?
Who's legal staff? City's legal staff?
Correct, yep,
Okay.
city staff. Chris and Field, yep. So, just to prep you for that, the site, the location of this, Crown Reserve, just north of Crown Point. It's part of the North Crown zone change. That's the whole right there, 83.88 acres. They're hatched in red. So their phasing plan, which you see in the staff report and their exhibits that the applicant provided, just includes the southern portion of it, the 37.67 acres. So, but this gives you an idea of where it is in location to Crown Point, Chase Road, Prairie Avenue. So you can see Spokane Street from Prairie going straight north. It will connect up with the Crown Reserve and then be developed that way to connect up to Hayden on the second phase. So the zoning, it's a little bit hard to tell, but the RM zoning is what this is zoned as, residential mixed. It does have a development agreement on it. It's hard to tell from the hatching because there's 2 hatched over it, so it's just above Crown Point there, all that purple. To the east and west is public reserve. To the east, there is the wastewater reclamation project there. That was done through the Land App site. And then to the west is a future school as proposed for the school district at their point in time when they want to move forward.
A water reclamation?
Correct. So
Are you talking sewage?
Yes.
Yes, so the treated water from the
Effluent.
plant, they only have so much to put into the discharge in the river per the permit. So they route it up here and they use all that land to the east of this site to water the land there, to percolate through, filter, and get treated that way back into the aquifer.
Is it being used now or it's future site?
Future.
Future.
Future,
Yeah,
yeah.
future.
It's currently not being,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't think you
So
need-
it's not
Sorry
like
if I
a regular
was-
sewage plant, it's a leach site.
Sprinklers.
Yeah, they'll be using sprinklers for the treated, so they'll treat it at the plant and they'll route it up there and then basically use sprinklers to disperse it amongst all that acreage there. But yeah, if I misspoke on that, it's future, not currently going on now. So,
Same like what's done on golf courses, that kind of thing.
so that just gives the idea of the zoning around there, and then Smart Code South and Crown Point subdivision. So, yes. Looking at the site a little bit closer, it's currently farmland. It's over the Rostrum Prairie Aquifer. The request proposed layout for wastewater is in conformance, and it is within conformance to the development agreement, like I mentioned earlier. They're not to exceed 525 residential units. They're only proposing 148 at this point in time, so it's within the agreement. The difference will be a part of Phase 2 or however the applicant wants to subdivide that in the future. City staff did review the Exhibit A8, which is in general conformance with the city standards, providing service to individual lots. So for that wastewater provided. The construction, and as noted in the staff report, construction of the wastewater for Phase 1, that mainline extension, will be included for that connection between Phase 1 and Phase 2. And so staff commented on that within the staff report to have that in place at Phase 1. And then Waters, East Green Acres irrigation purveyor in that area, and they do have a will serve letter Exhibit A5 that you can look at in the staff report. Traffic-wise, the proposed layout, their Exhibit A4 is consistent with the city's transportation master plan and design standards, so staff reviewed that and did not note anything being anticipating for an issue. They don't, yeah, so. Just to give a little bit further information on this, future land use designation shows us as transitional, which basically focuses the requirements and kind of the guiding principles of this development area in the transitional zone to the focus area within the comprehensive plan. It's within the Central Prairie focus area, and just one note to highlight there, it supports provisions for a variety of housing types and densities for that focus area. Going into the review criteria now for the subdivision, we look at the proposal. Here's what they have proposed for that first section, that first phase of this subdivision. You can see on the bottom of that screen, Bodine Avenue going east-west is going to be fully extended out to the west to Chase. And you can see it built out there that's proposed at this current point in time.
So Bodine is part of the first phase.
Correct. So that kind of gives you a snapshot there. Some of the lot sizes and the number of lots, again, 148. So,
Just a quick question
Yep.
in regards to the way that those numbers are calculated. So the 148 units is spread across that 37 acres to
Correct.
get our dwelling unit count,
mhm.
or dwelling units per acreage. But then when we're actually looking at the average lot area, that's the actual finished lot size of each one of those individual lots, minus all the common area.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So this gives you an idea of what they're proposing for the layout. And then looking at that first review criteria for this, we look at the provisions for water, making sure they're adequate and they meet the proposed. And so, as I mentioned, the will serve letter was provided in East Green Acres, from East Green Acres Irrigation District, so they can serve the site. And review criteria 2 looks at the provisions for sewage system, the public sewage system. As I mentioned kind of earlier about some of that other intricacies being that mainline extension in Phase 1. There's also the sewer capacity analysis that was provided by the applicant, Exhibit A7, as well as the sewer design for Exhibit A8. So that was all within the staff report to kind of show you a little bit further on what's proposed. Also, staff has reviewed that through the staff report, made their comments, and no issues from their that has arose from staff's comment and review. Review criteria 3 looks at the streets and the transportation element, the comprehensive plan. You can see Hayden Avenue is a major collector, which is on the northern end there of the overall 83.88 acre site. You have Bodine Avenue, which is a minor collector, Chase Road being another collector, as well as Spokane Street. So
And Spokane's a major collector?
Spokane, I can let Rob Paulus ask or go into a little more detail on that for that.
Okay.
It transitions from Prairie, north of Prairie and south of Prairie are technically different, and so when
Okay.
they created those, but they're both collectors. So major, minor, it is a collector roadway.
Okay.
So it will be viewed as such. So when that connects up, most likely to Hayden Avenue, that collector system will be still in place. So.
What's the note at the bottom?
So city speed and volume study conducted in October indicated lower volumes existing traffic on Spokane Street. That's just a note from staff.
Lower volumes than what?
Lower volumes than what was, I think, projected or looked at for the subdivision. But, I mean, I believe if Rob Paulus wants to expand on that or you have further questions, you can.
Yeah,
Just
I'd
basically-
like Rob to come up and talk a little bit more about it, because I know
Yeah.
at the last city council meeting, this came up, and it was quite a lengthy discussion.
This is
so
going to be I'm sure, the
Correct.
thing
Yeah.
that needs to be talked
And-
about.
You know, full disclosure, I lived in this neighborhood for 9 years, so I was there before that roundabout is, and I know all the traffic on that park on the street right there, so I wanted to, Mr. Paulus, kind of talk about that a little bit.
So, members of the commission, Robert Paulus, city engineer. Regarding the comment about the lower volumes of existing traffic on Spokane Street, what that inferred was that the volumes of traffic on Spokane Street that we measured in October were lower than what were being projected in the traffic study or the abbreviated traffic study that the applicant put together. So what that tends to indicate is that there are more people who are utilizing the Crown Point exit from the Crown Point subdivision than are necessarily using Spokane Street. I would utilize that more as a comfort zone that there is actually more capacity than what the abbreviated traffic study was showing.
But the capacity in the traffic study was sufficient.
Yes, the traffic study that they provided showed that there's sufficient capacity on Spokane Street to handle the projected growth from the subdivision. And then what the actual numbers that we saw in October of 2024 showed was that there's even more than what the traffic study was indicating.
Makes sense.
Well, and in the reality, if you take a look in the background, October 2024, we took a 3-day snapshot of traffic to utilize. Does that meet with what we generally anticipate for average annual day? That could change a little bit from day to day, week to week, or month to month. But reasonably, we're comfortable with the data that we saw, and it does support the finding that Spokane Street has enough capacity, and we're nowhere near the capacity of the Spokane Street and Prairie roundabout.
Have you looked at, is there any potential that Bodine pulls some of the flow off of Spokane Street from the existing?
So yes, there is the potential that from the Crown Point subdivision that a percentage of traffic would go up and utilize Bodine Avenue to get out to Chase, and then my perspective would be to probably head north to get up to Hayden Avenue. What percentage of that? The traffic study that they provided had about 25% of the new trips being generated from this subdivision heading north that direction, and I would give it maybe a couple more percentage points for what was going to go out. You're not really going to see traffic change on Bodine Avenue until the school develops out there, or if you were to get some development on the south side of Bodine with a more intense type of land use.
But this application includes Bodine all the way to Chase.
This application includes Bodine all the way from Spokane Street to Chase Road, yes. It is a reduced section on the piece on the western half of it, but it's still a 2-lane road with no driveways and sufficient capacity to handle what this subdivision is going to be putting out at this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And did you want me to cover the differences of the major minor collector issue on Spokane Street as well?
I'm comfortable with that, but if anybody else has.
I just had a question, like along Spokane, on these streets that were limiting or prohibiting access to these residences, so along Bodine and along Spokane Street.
Yes.
There are a lot of houses that will front to that, but not have driveways.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be street parking along there?
Yes.
Okay. On Spokane and Bodine?
Yes. Utilizing Spokane Street as it's built south of this subdivision, you have the on-street parking on both sides, and with that front-facing home with the rear access, having that on-street parking is actually an important element for
Yes.
the nature of the residential neighborhood to keep traffic slower in velocity as it's going through the subdivision.
Okay. And having an alley terminating into Bodine isn't a problem?
No.
Okay.
So that allows for traffic to come out onto Bodine in a front-facing manner. It's not backing out into Bodine. We don't anticipate Bodine ever being anything other than a 25-mile-per-hour roadway either.
Okay.
Any other questions? Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to review criteria 4, we look at making sure the proposed subdivision doesn't have any topographical conditions presenting hazards or anything in the soil presenting hazards that would prevent it being compatible. So the site is, I mentioned, located over the Ratchman Prairie Aquifer. There's been no known soil topographical conditions that have been raised or provided as presenting hazards. And then, again, that water reclamation project in the future to the land app site to the east. So. Review criteria 5 looks at making sure the proposed subdivision is zoned for the proposed use and then conforms to that requirement found in the code. So, as I mentioned, there's a development agreement for this through zone change -22-7, that project file number for the North Crown zone change, and they are meeting that development agreement with this proposal what they've submitted. So. And then the lot sizes and the lots themselves conform as staff reviewed to Title 18 and 17. So didn't see any issues with the lots there. Review criteria 6 looks at making sure there's adequate plans for the community to bear no more than its fair share of costs by providing services through fees and furnishing land and other mitigation measures. So typically this is done through impact fees. So as the lots get developed and platted and then the building permits are pulled, all those impact fees for fire, multimodal, streets, public safety, parks, EMS, all that is done through the building permit. So they collect the fees based on those permits pulled, and those help offset that mitigation for parks and all those systems. So we noticed jurisdiction, or we noticed through the jurisdictions here, in this list here, of these agencies that were notified, we received 8 of them back, 7 on this slide, and then I'll do the 8th one on the next slide, but pretty much remaining neutral or no comments amongst all of them. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue is the only one that'll review and comment during the permitting process. So for each individual home, as well as the subdivision construction plans, those will be reviewed by fire through that process. But everybody else seems to have not a comment or either remains neutral. The public agency comment 8 is Post Falls Highway District. They were opposed and requested traffic impact analysis to be performed, looking at all roadways and access to the property. They sent this notice in at the cutoff date, the last day to make comments, and then the following afterwards, they updated their revision to state basically requiring, it's all in the purple 1, 2, and 3 on the slide, but they require traffic impact analysis to be provided, and they want clarification on which exit and entrance points the anticipated traffic will be utilizing, and then they plans to mitigate the offset intersection at Bodine and Chase via traffic impact analysis. So that was their updated response after, I believe, the applicant and them spoke about their initial opposition. So when the chair, Stephenson, you do have that in your hand. So,
Their major concern was around Bodine and Chase,
to my understanding,
not
yes.
specifically Prairie and Spokane.
Correct.
And that's because that's in their district
Yeah.
and they're maintaining those until some point in the future when the city annexes all the way around that, correct?
Why does the, I think Rob alluded to the reduced section? Is that because the area south of Bodine's not being annexed, so it's like that half the street or something?
Yeah, I saw that too.
So the rights-of-way for Bodine Avenue would be north of the center line and the future center line of Bodine Avenue. The rights-of-way are not in existence, and the applicant doesn't have possession or the ability to acquire those at this time.
So it'll be 2-lane, just narrow.
Yeah, it would exceed the 24-foot minimum width, which is enough to accommodate 1 lane of traffic in each direction. Most of the older parts of Post Falls where there is no curb and gutter, you have a 24 to 28-foot wide asphalt roadway.
But there is curb and gutter and sidewalk on the north side
We
all
would
the
be
way.
putting curb and gutter on the north side, but there would be no need for on-street parking, so, you know, you would have our stormwater treatment, you'd have the 1 lane of traffic in each direction. And that would get, the applicant would be making a request, and they talked with me previously, Belmore Street, which is the most western one that they have proposed. We were requesting that they provide curb bulbs on each of those intersections intersecting Bodine. That intersection itself at Belmore, we wouldn't require it on that because that extra 7 feet of width would actually be needed to make the road work as we're in that narrower section. And staff would not have a problem with relinquishing that. We would end up most likely getting that when the south side of the road develops.
But based off the analysis you guys did, and you don't share this concern with, that they have, or is it just more right away and they're just thinking more long-term or something?
Well, I don't want to go putting words
Sure.
in Post Falls Highway District's view. We've had similar construction that has happened in other places of Post Falls over the years. And one, it sometimes can cause a little bit more congestion at an intersection. As an interim process, even if that's 10, 15 years, that may not be a bad thing. The most critical item that I would look at from a traffic engineer's perspective would be to look at how the left turns are set up to make sure that the left turns don't conflict with each other. In this case, with the layout of Bodine and Chase, the lefts would be situated such that they would not conflict. If they was flipped the other way and you were trying to develop the south side of Bodine, all of a sudden the left turns would be overlapping each other, and that could create a safety issue. However, Post Falls Highway District does want to have a better idea of the layout, and they want to discuss this more with the applicant, and the city would be most likely involved in that discussion as well.
Yeah, so they're concerned about the offset. Bodine doesn't line up with something on the other side.
Yes. That's my understanding.
But you guys don't see this as an impasse, and it's just something you guys can work through?
I think it's something that can be worked out with the highway district, the applicant, and the city. The city would be respective of the Post Falls Highway District, as the majority of the right-of-way in that location is theirs, and so it has to be something that's worked out prior to us being able to allow for the construction of the subdivision.
Thank you.
Outside of that, that's all staff kind of has. Here's the 6 review criteria again, and I will stand for any further questions you have.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Invite the applicant up. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ray Kimball for the record. My address is 2104 Columbine Court here in Post Falls. I'm here representing the owners tonight, Jacqueline Land Company. So I'll get right into it. So as Ethan pointed out, and thank you for a thorough presentation, This is the project location. And this is the overall kind of grand scheme of things. And so I want to talk about this just for a few minutes. So we were limited by the zoning agreement to 150 lots, but without figuring out sewer for the whole thing, for the whole rest of it. And so that's why we're at 148. It was a nice convenient number and nice convenient cutoff. And so what we have is this area here that's darker. That is this phase here. It includes, let's see here, it includes this area right here, which is a 3.6 acre park. And as you can see, it provides provision for Harmon Street, which is right here, to connect out eventually through the school district property. It provides Spokane Street the ability or access all the way up to Hayden. It provides another future access up to Hayden. And of course, it provides access down to Bodine and Bodine all the way out to Chase Road. So the school district property is an important part of why we're here tonight. Part of our commitment when we did the zone map amendment a year or so ago was that we were going to be bringing utilities and roadways to the school district property to essentially make their site shovel ready for a school whenever they need it. And that's an important part of this. And I think it's really important to remember that. That was part of our presentation at that point in time, and we're living up to that. So this is the subdivision plan. I'll speak a little bit about this. So we basically have some lot size configurations that on the northern end right in here, these blocks in this direction are the larger lots. They're in the 8,000 to 13,000 square foot range. These here on the southern end are in the 5,000 to 7,000 square foot range. As you can see here, this block on the south is all alley loaded. And that is so that we have front facing houses with rear loaded garages, so the access for vehicular access is off of the alley for those lots. And then over here on the east side, so east of Spokane Street, we have what we're calling our cottage lots. So these are the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot lots. They're very narrow. They're all alley loaded. And this is basically an attempt to create a marketplace for a product that is different than what we see typically in our subdivisions. So this is the what I call kind of the most bang for your buck lots when it comes to what will be built on those. So the plan is to have decent size houses, but they're 2 stories stacked on top of each other, narrow, with a garage coming off the back. So we were very intentional with a lot of our design. We have, as you can see here, we have on Spokane Street, we have bulb outs here at Kilkenny and at Balmoral. Those are very intentional with those R's. Those are essentially constrictions in the road at those intersections. They do 2 things. They slow traffic down because perceived constriction slows traffic, and it also gives pedestrians who are crossing the street in those locations a shorter path across the street, so they don't have to be out in the street as long. It was a very intentional design feature. We wanted this to be a very pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. And because we do expect a school to be located west of us, we understand there's going to be kids. And also, there's a park. So, and I'll talk about the park a little bit more later when I talk about the open space. And keep moving. So with regards to the subdivision criteria, Ethan is correct. We are within the boundaries of East Green Acres Irrigation District, and we have a will serve letter indicating that they have the ability and capacity to serve water. The City of Post Falls will be providing sewer, and we've done a capacity analysis to ensure that there is available sewer capacity. With regards to the transportation master plan, so Again, a very important component of this is the construction and extension of Bodine. So it's a quarter mile of offsite improvement of extending Bodine all the way out to Chase Road. As Rob mentioned, it'll be 2 lanes, curb and gutter on the north side, and it's basically a half road. And if I were to give you an example of what it's in the city of Post Falls, a similar situation with regards to the intersection at Bodine and Chase across the street, it's very similar to Fisher and Chase. So there's the Guy Road, or the Guy Field, all the cows in the pasture. And if you're driving west on Fisher, so that south side across from all of those houses is just that pasture, and it's not built. So it's a half right of way. It's 2 lanes of road, and there's parking. There's enough there for parking. But when you get to Chase, there's a slight offset. It's about 7 or 8 foot offset. But what happens is that because this is offset to the north, instead of headlights jousting, if it were opposite, the headlights would be jousting to make left-hand turns. But in this case, they're offset, so it's not an unsafe intersection. So it just basically half the intersection is built, and eventually in the future, that'll likely be rectified. And so it's not offset in so much as that the center lines are going to line up. They will in the future. It's just now there's just about a half a lane shift. So something that's very common, and definitely not anything that is dangerous or going to cause any traffic hazards. So, and again, of course, we've made provisions to ensure that Spokane Street does extend north to Hayden Avenue. As I mentioned before, we were intentional with its design with the bulb outs, and we were also very intentional with its alignment in not making it a straight shot drag strip. So we wanted to make sure it had a nice big curve to it, so that you can't see from one end to the other and go from, and you know, and also because we have houses fronting it, we wanted to make sure it has a residential feel. And so having those bulb outs gives a really nice defined parking area. So it's really nice to have that. With regards to the subdivision criteria, meeting the requirements of the zoning code, we meet all the requirements of the RM zoning. The most specific one is the 7% open space requirement. So if we were to take 7% of 88 or 83 acres or so, that would put us right around 6 acres of necessary open space. That's for the entire 80. And right now we have 5.38 in just this southern half, essentially. So we're essentially, we're going to be in the future way over and above the required open space requirement. And right now we're at 14.3%. Minimum lot area is just a shade over 3,000. Maximum lot area is 13,000. So, and we're at 3.6, or excuse me, our, yeah, and 148 lots. We have 14 open space tracts, alley tracts, and 1 park. So this is the subdivision plan. So we've got 5.3 acres of open space. Our requirement is only 2.66 acres at this point. So we have a 3.6 acre park. That is below the 5 acre threshold that the City Parks Department likes to see for ownership and maintenance. So this will likely be owned and maintained by the Homeowners Association. And it's also important to, so we threw an amenity in here. We had this little spot in this area here. And it's a little hard to see, but we've included an amenity that is rare in amongst subdivisions, is that we're including this boat RV trailer storage area. So secured parking for the residents of the subdivision that keeps boats off of the street frontages, you know, RVs, things like that. Really cleans up the streetscape. That was something that in our pre-development meeting was lauded by the police department as well as the fire department. They love to see that. They're like, yeah, get those things off the street, give them a place to go. And so that'll be available for the residents of the subdivision here. And of course, with regards to topographical conditions or hazards, we don't know of any that are incompatible with use. It's an ag field. There was once a railroad that ran across it. That's about it. And of course, we have to make sure that the developer plans, that we don't have any more than or we do not make plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs to provide services by paying fees, land, etc. For parks and other facilities. We'll be paying impact fees at the time of building permit, and there will be a 3.6 acre park and a quarter-mile of off-site streets to be constructed in the form of Bodine Avenue. So all of those things are ensuring that the community bears that the developer pays their fair share. We did request, as Rob mentioned, that there be no bulb out right here at Balmoral, and we're okay with them at Cologne and at Spokane Street. Totally makes sense. Makes for shorter pedestrian crossings. Absolutely love that. It just a little too tight right here. It pinches it, and so we'd request that Balmoral Drive be removed from condition 7. We also appreciate the removal of condition 6. And with regards to the highway district and their requests for a traffic study, we've told them, they came back to us, we asked them what the scope was. They said they want to make sure we're safely designing the intersection of Bodine and Chase. No problem. Got to do that anyway. And they wanted traffic impact analysis on Chase and Hayden intersection and Chase and Prairie intersection, and we can do that, no problem. So beyond that, submit to you that we have met all the requirements for a subdivision approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
When it comes to alleyways, those are all going to be private?
Yes.
And so that'll all be HOA maintained and et cetera?
Yes.
And that same good thing goes for the RV storage, which it looks like is basically only going to be accessed via an alleyway.
I'm going to back up to that real quick. So Kilkenny, yeah, it is Kilkenny Loop. Yes, it'll be an alley. And the alleyways are, I believe I've got them designed at 20 feet wide.
Okay. And fire department doesn't have any issue with RV storage off of I mean, I'm sure they'll chime in at the time, but.
No, they were happy with it.
Okay.
So they were absolutely excited.
And then the 3.6 acre park, is there any parking provided for that anywhere?
No.
Just street?
Yep. It's intended to be a neighborhood park. As you'll notice, there is residential streets. There will be one on the north side as well as the south side. Just like any residential street, it's designed for parking on both sides.
Okay.
So there will be plenty of on-street parking. And again, as I mentioned, it's a neighborhood park. Oops. And
then the intersection of Bodine and Cologne, there will be bulb outs up there, or pop outs, or whatever you were going to call them?
yeah,
Because I didn't see them on the site plan, but maybe
they're
that's
not.
just-
So
okay.
that was something that staff requested.
Okay.
And so instead of including or revising the preliminary plat, we're just taking care of that on the construction plans.
Okay, that's the only questions I had.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
The water treatment,
Yeah.
does that have a stench to it?
So, short answer is no. So the intent is for it to be, my understanding is that it's Class A wastewater. And Class A wastewater is essentially it's better than river water quality, if I were to describe it. And so it's chlorinated, so it's treated at the treatment plant. It's chlorinated. It runs in purple pipes, which is essentially means that it's okay for irrigation in front yards, golf courses, Class A is essentially there's no setbacks. It's like if you remember the old Post Falls irrigation district that pumped out of the river and went up to the canals and ran around. It's essentially that quality water or better.
Would you swim in it?
Yep.
Would you put it in your vodka?
Relevance. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the boat, RV parking,
Yeah.
which one of the lots is that for?
We haven't figured out the logistics of that yet.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Public testimony?
Vodka kills everything. Vodka kills everything.
All right, wishing to speak? Yes. Neutral? Valerie Hamilton? I know you put maybe on here too, but. Name and address for the record, and you have 4 minutes.
My name is Valerie Hamilton. I live at 8953 North Scottsworth Street. My home is right on the corner of Cologne Way, so I'm going to have Bodine behind me, Cologne beside me, and Scottsworth in front of me. And mostly, I just have questions. When we had an opportunity to speak before, we'd ask questions, but we never got answers. So I just have a few questions, and maybe we can address these things. Where are the lines, or where will they be placed for the wastewater, and are they already existing, or are they going to tear up Spokane Street after this development is put in?
You're talking the long term for the,
Yeah, for the treatment
For
of
the
the
land?
water
Okay.
that's going to be going in there.
I gotcha.
I see that Spokane Street is not going to go straight through. It's going to have that nice little curve in it. But as you come into or if you come into Spokane Street, where the area is that it has the nice little curve now, and it has that roundabout there at Spokane Street and Prairie, that is a nightmare for parking. Although I have seen in the last few days that there are a lot fewer people parking there, and I read an article that maybe that has been addressed. But you cannot get in there. It makes that curve, and then when they plow the streets, then it plows those people in. It's just really, really hard to get through. I'd like to have that addressed, what happens. Who's gonna plow the roads? Is that a city thing? Is that part of their HOA that's just gonna do their alleys, and who's gonna plow the roads for the rest of it? Because currently in our neighborhood, we literally get stuck in the street. Many times we've been stuck because we can't get plows to come through and get us in and out. So will Bodine open up to Chase before the school is put in? And what happens if the voters in Post Falls choose not to put a school in, because we all have to pay for that? So what if they say, we're not going to put a school in? How does that affect, this neighborhood and where the streets go? It said, I believe I heard that the right-of-ways will have a curb and gutter and sidewalk on the north side of Bodine. But what will happen on the south side that's closest to our homes there? Who is going to maintain that property between our house? Is that city property? Does that belong to the developer? Are we as residents responsible for doing that? Let's see. If that's city property, does that mean that the city is going to come in and put in fencing between our property and Bodine Street? What is a bulb out? Let's see. And I see that they're going to put in that trailer area and that boat, which is great because our neighborhood looks like a boat and RV show all the time. I think it's a great idea to have that, but how are you going to say who in that whole neighborhood of this, I don't know, I wrote it down, how many houses there's going to be?
148.
148. If half those people have boats and RVs, how are you going to decide? You're going to do a lottery and say, this is who gets to park here? You know, how does that keep those boats and trailers off the street? So I see that the houses on the east side of Spokane Street will have small lots with two-story houses, but I'd like to know about the houses on the other side of Bodine Street. Are they going to be two-story as well? Are they going to be, you know, I see that they're going to face Bodine Street. And what I've noticed in that is that when they can't get in and out because the alleyways behind them are, you know, they're narrow when you get those cloud kind of, they don't have a place to put snow. So then that Bodine Street becomes a main parking space for all of those houses in front of them as well as behind them. So I apologize, I'm out of time. Maybe we can address some of these questions, please.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Mr. Kimball? Do you think you can address some of these concerns? If you wrote them all down?
I did.
If you know the
Perfect.
answers.
Yeah.
I think he knows most of them.
Ray Kimball again for the record. So I think, so the sewer in the street, so we're, as a matter of fact, we just a week or so ago had a conversation with Public Works Department about working with them, in conjunction with them, to install some of this purple pipe, some of that wastewater line, to go out to their land application area, so to get it in under the street. And we'll be in communication with them about that, so that it doesn't get torn up in the future when they go to do that. Good planning on both parts.
Is the trunk line in Spokane Street already?
No,
No.
there's no pipe from the wastewater. It would be the first piece of pipe from the treatment plant to the land
I
application
meant
area.
the sewer and water.
Oh, sewer and water? Yeah, so sewer is actually in Cologne. So the deepest sewer is in Cologne. It's already stubbed out north, and it's actually, there's a manhole in Bodine. I'm going to jump into my subdivision presentation here really quick. There's, let's see, yeah, this will work. So when Crown Point was constructed, the developers did not, they wrote a check for the development of their half of Bodine, and they wrote it to the city. And so he said, we're going to hold this, and when Bodine, it's time, we'll use that to pay for the construction of the south half of Bodine across the frontage of Crown Point. And so we're doing the design. City's contribution is that half, based on using the check that the prior developer wrote. And so there will be curb gutter sidewalk on the south side of Bodine, adjoining
Those folks' place.
yeah, Ms. Hamilton's property. And there will be no requirement, no one's going to put in a fence. She's welcome to put her own in, but I don't think no one's going to do that. And so this section of Bodine from here all the way across to Spokane Street will be constructed both sides.
Everything abutting Crown Point.
Everything abutting, yep.
And
everything.
that's existing right of way.
It is existing right of way, yes. And Bodine will be constructed, I want to clarify that Bodine will be constructed with the construction of this phase regardless of whether a school goes in or not. That was a large part of our commitment to them, was to get them water, sewer, and streets to their site, so that if and when they need to develop, it is a benefit to the taxpayers. So basically, they don't have to bring water, sewer, and streets to their site. It's something that we're doing for them. So there's a large benefit to the school district and any potential bond payers for any future school construction, should that get passed in the future. And I think that addresses her questions.
The type of housing in there, will it be kind of similar to what's already in Crown Point?
Oh, yeah. The housing across the street will be same stuff as what's in Crown Point, yes. So 1 and 2 story homes. I believe the zoning code limits single-family houses to 35 feet tall.
And then the only one, and I think Mr. Paulus can probably talk to this a little bit about the parking around near the roundabout, and then that concern as it goes up north into this development.
I mean,
So,
as
or
it,
maybe you
as
have-
it relates to this development, I mean, I can't really speak to the existing conditions to
Sure.
the south, but what I can speak to is that the bulb outs, which are
yeah.
these extensions of the curb at the intersections where it constricts the street, what it does is it produces a very defined parking lane for people who are doing on-street parking. And it has a traffic calming influence on drivers. And so drivers tend to drive slower through those areas, which is good for pedestrians. And so there is on-street parking on Spokane Street, very, very intentional, very designated.
And the trailer parking, has that kind of an idea how that's going to really work yet?
Well,
CC&Rs?
we've kicked around some ideas, but
Still planning?
right, there's a lot of options there. One of which is to charge for it. So kind of first come, first served basis, charge for it, and that leads to an income stream for an HOA other than just dues, which is something that can be really helpful for a homeowners association.
Because the HOA is also paying for clearing alleyways, like
They're
snow
paying for
removal and stuff.
clearing alleyways, they're paying for mowing and irrigating their open space, including a 3.6 acre park. It's
quite a bit.
It's a lot. So it is not an insignificant amount of money. Any other questions?
I think, well, if we didn't answer all the questions, I think we got most of them. I'm sure we can get it, some city staff or the developer can meet with you after the meeting. We can definitely, I think that was most of them.
So again, I'd like to point out that we've met all the criteria for approval, and we request an approval tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, close the hearing, and we'll look at the review criteria.
Thank you, Commissioners. What we have before you is the Crown Reserve subdivision application.
I got it. Thanks.
24-5. We'll go through the criteria, as you're probably getting used to. Number 1.
Ray already said he met all of them.
Pardon?
Ray already said he met all of them.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you again.
He's being
Don't pay
silly.
attention.
Continue.
If you want to just, yeah. All right. Definite provision has been made for water supply system that is adequate in terms of quantity and quality for the type of subdivision proposed.
Yes, East Green Acres.
Will serve from East Green Acres.
Thank you. Same question, adequate provisions for a public sewage system that the existing municipal system can accommodate the proposed sewer flows.
Yep. The
Yes,
city of
Post
Post
Falls.
Falls.
City has indicated that they have sufficient the ability to serve, yes. Number 3, the proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And there's been quite a bit of testimony on this. If you guys could point out what your thoughts are on this one, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, there was a traffic study done on the areas around Spokane Street and traffic coming in and out, and it determined that there was actually less volume than what city staff actually thought, so there's significant ability to handle some more traffic, and with the addition of Bogie going out to Chase, that does give another exit out of that area, along with the original Crown Point entrance and exit that's over there also.
My thought is that this is it is the best way to approach it, since the right-of-way doesn't exist to the west. I mean, if that right-of-way was there all the way out to Chase, that this could be the same width, that would be fantastic, but it's just not there.
Yeah.
But I do still have that concern about a larger street being funneled down to something smaller, having to deal with Poleline all the time. We're in that same type of situation. It works, but it's not.
Yeah, until that land to the south gets developed, yeah. But at least the northern part of it will,
I think they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
sure.
It's the shape of the parcel to the south, if it's one owner, is probably cost prohibitive to add all that right away, but they're doing what they can.
Thank you, Commissioners. Number 4, areas of the proposed subdivision which may involve soil or topographical conditions have been identified, and that the proposed uses of these areas are compatible with such conditions. And I think we have our standard response on this one, unless somebody heard something to the contrary.
Yeah, nothing was identified, nothing
None
in the public
identified.
hearing, just over the Ratham Aquifer.
Thank you. Number 5, the area for the proposed for the subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, and the use conforms to the other requirements found in the code.
Yep.
Yes.
It's following the development agreement, but it's actually, the density is lower than what could be allowed in that zone, so appreciate that.
I think we have a residential mixed zoning, which allows for the R1 zoning, and it sounds like all the testimony was conformed, that the lot size is conformed, so. And finally, number 6, the developer has made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs by providing other mitigation, including impact fees.
Yeah, they're gonna bear a lot of cost with the Bodine, the park, sewer sizing to accommodate the school. So I think they're gonna pay out considerably more than their fair share.
One thing I did when I was looking at this, we have a 37-acre, 38-acre project, and out of that, there's, I forgot what the numbers were, but it ends up being like 6 or 7 acres that go to open space, to roads, to green spaces along the roads and so forth. So overall, this is not a dense project, in my opinion. I don't see that there's any negative offsite impact.
Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts, discussion? All right. Anybody like to make a motion?
Do you want me to talk on that issue?
If you want.
Commissioners,
Yeah.
let me just mention too, on the conditions where we spoke about. So my recommendation was to remove the existing condition number 6, because generally the city doesn't impose requirements for off-site disclosures of potential future development. So that number 6, we felt was inappropriate for us to mandate what's going to be in their CCNRs for the potential future use of an off-site improvement. There was also some discussion as to the Highway District's comments, and depending on how the commission feels about addressing the Highway District's comments, we could direct the applicant to work with the Highway District through the development process to continue to alleviate their concerns.
I think they pretty well have to either way.
Yeah, true. So those are my comments. I didn't mean to interrupt, sorry.
No, you're fine. And then the developer requested
Condition 7.
number
that we
7, remove
Balmoral
Drive.
from the bulbs.
Balmoral.
And that was not on the staff report, but in the construction documents. Is that right?
So,
I'm sorry, and when the applicant spoke, I missed that part of what he was saying, but I think that's correct. John?
I equally missed that connection to
All right.
condition 7
he was saying the
specifically.
You guys hear the
bulbs
same thing I
were
heard?
non-conducive to the
We were listening.
traffic flow.
We were listening.
Yeah.
I appreciate your diligence.
So I believe
I
it was
did hear
keep-
about the what was presented, showing him, but the initial design didn't have them.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure.
keep
So-
keep
So
the
we're
bulbs on
striking
Cologne
7?
and Spokane, but take them off of Balmoral, right?
Just taking Balmoral Drive off of 7, but leaving
Correct.
them
Just remove
Cologne Way
Balmoral
and
Drive from
Spokane.
condition 7.
So I just had one comment, just kind of a general comment. I know we're doing more and more subdivisions that have private roads, alleyways, community green space and so forth. it's just a concern that these HOAs aren't necessarily set up to handle that long-term, meaning, you know, if you have to come in here and repave all this stuff, there's a $500,000 bill. I know that HOAs are not the city's control, but I get concerned when the city could be somehow forced to come in and maintain this stuff because the homeowners can't. And I don't know what there's probably not a good solution to that, but just a comment.
I don't know of an instance of that happening. Do you guys?
There are instances where older developments petition for the city to take over streets and.
Yeah, to take over the streets, yeah.
And generally, I think that the city has instituted a policy requiring, you know, it to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, be brought up to city standards. I know that there was a policy discussion on that not very long ago, but it is a concern at some point when, you know, HOAs get 50 years old and nobody maintains them anymore. What do they do with some of these private streets?
I think typically if they can build them to standards where the city would take it, they do so at the time of development. Otherwise, they don't meet the standards of the city anyway, and the city can't take them.
You just end up with a lot of angry homeowners. I know there's a big situation in some other local cities with some pretty big projects where the homeowners never knew that they had common areas. They just didn't read their CC&Rs. And now the developer's done, and all of a sudden, first time in 10 years, they get a big HOA assessment because now they're in charge. I just think we ought to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Hey, does anybody have the motion, the binder with the motion?
I know, I was like, I don't have my cheat sheet.
We don't have
but-
those, Chris.
They didn't bring them out for you?
No. And if you want a good motion, we're gonna need them.
If you want a good motion, we gotta make sure we got our cheat sheets.
Or we'll be making up a lot of stuff.
We can make some stuff up, but you're not gonna like it.
Sorry, generally, we had those bench
Yep.
copies that are brought out for
That's
you.
okay.
I don't. Thank you.
I thought maybe it was just mine that was missing. I was like, you guys have yours.
I bet you could make a motion.
Come on, Ross.
Yeah, you
Do it.
I'll wait for the book.
make it official.
Don't want to mess it up. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Does that help, Kimmy?
Subdivision.
All right.
I can make the motion.
I'll move to approve the Crown Reserve subdivision, file SUBD 20-24-5, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code 17.12.060H, as outlined in our deliberation and subject to the conditions 1 through 12 contained in the staff report. Would also direct staff to delete condition 6 and remove Balmoral Drive from condition 7. And to prepare a written reasoned decision.
Nice.
How'd I
Very
do?
good.
Sounds good.
Would never get through
Yeah,
that.
motion
You
on
have that all
the-
memorized.
Yeah, would never
Yeah.
get through that without
A
the
motion on
cheat
the
sheet.
floor. Do we have a second?
I second.
And we have a second. Roll call, please.
Walton,
Yes.
Wilhelm,
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
Schlauthauer,
Yes.
Schreiber.
Yes.
All righty. Next hearing tonight will be, if I can get my right page to work. There we go. Killdeer Meadows subdivision, file number SUBD 24-8. Anna to present tonight.
Good evening, Commissioners. Anna Stahl, one of the planners here with the city. I'm going to be presenting the staff report for the Killdeer Meadows subdivision. The applicant is Lake City Engineering, and the owner is Northern Lights Development. They are requesting to subdivide approximately 4.89 acres into 18 single-family lots. The property is located south of Killdeer Avenue between North Greens Ferry Road and Cecil Road. It is located within a county pocket, but they're currently in the process of applying for annexation into the city with a zoning designation of single-family residential R1. The properties within the city to the north and the west are zoned single-family residential R1, and the properties to the east and the south are still within the county. The property is currently large lot, single-family residential. It's located over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Water would be provided by Ross Point Water District and sewer by the city of Post Falls. Traffic impacts, Killdeer Avenue is a minor collector, and it provides connectivity between Greens Ferry and Cecil, which are a minor arterial and major collector respectively. And no impacts are anticipated on the traffic network from residential 1 subdivisions. The future land use designation is low-density residential, which this subdivision would fall under. And the focus area is 41 North, which prioritizes pedestrian connectivity, multi-use paths and trails, which would come along with this development. Here you can see the subdivision plan. The smallest lot is 7,973 square feet, with the largest lot being 9,185 square feet, and all of the lots are at least 60 feet wide. Review criteria 1, we're going to get into the review criteria. This one, definite provision has been made for a water supply system and that has adequate quantity and quality for this type of subdivision. Water will be provided by Ross Point Water District, as I mentioned, and Exhibit A5 in the staff report is a will serve letter from Ross Point indicating that they are able to service this subdivision. Review criteria 2, adequate provisions have been made for a public sewage system, and the existing system can handle flows from this proposed subdivision. The city does have the capacity and willingness to serve the subdivision as proposed in Exhibit A3, which is the proposed plan. Review criteria 3, proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. Again, traffic impacts on Killdeer Avenue are not expected to exceed what the roadway can handle, and it does align with the transportation element of the master plan. Here you can see the roadway section for Mayella Lane and Laverne Lane, which are the local residential interior roadways for this subdivision. And then Killdeer Avenue is the minor collector. Here you can see the roadway section that'll be along the north end of the subdivision. Review criteria 4, all areas of the proposed subdivision which may involve soil or topographical conditions presenting hazards have been identified. The site is located over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, but no known soil or topographical conditions that would provide hazards have been identified either by staff or by any of the agencies notified of this subdivision application. Review criteria 4, the area proposed for subdivision is zoned for the proposed use and the use conforms to other requirements found in this code. Currently, the property is not zoned for this use as they are in the middle of the annexation process and have requested the residential R1 zone. So this subdivision would be conditioned on annexation approval, but if the annexation is approved with the R1 zone, this subdivision would conform to the requirements of Title 17 and 18. All of the lot widths are 60 feet at least. Some of them are a little bit wider, and then all of the lot sizes are at least 7,000 square feet, which is over the 6,500 square foot minimum for the zone that they are requesting. Review criteria 6, the developer has made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of costs to provide services by paying fees, furnishing land, etc. And again, any development in this subdivision will have impact and cap fees applied at the time of building permits. This is a list of some of the agencies that were notified of this subdivision. Of these agencies, we've received comments from 8 of them. Comments range from remaining neutral, no comments, no impact, or from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. They will be reviewing during the permitting process. Here are the review criteria again, and with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions?
When does this go before the city council? The annexation?
I don't have it memorized, but this will be conditioned upon that approval.
Yeah.
And then the MDA wouldn't go before them until after, or at the same time as the annexation.
I think we've got it scheduled in February, but again, I'm not sure which city council hearing, but I'm pretty sure.
Is there any issue with us approving this prior to annexation?
No, it's common.
Okay,
Oftentimes, we see the
Usually it was the
annexation
same
and
meeting.
subdivision the same night.
that's what I was
And so
wondering.
depending on like when we receive or completeness with an application, I think that's kind of why this one was separated, was because of the material, the timing. But, yeah, that's,
Applicant maybe didn't have his homework done at the time last time.
There was a note from Ross Point in their will serve
Mm-hmm.
that this is currently in the Prairie Water Association, so there have to be some water rights transferred.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that.
usually if there's water
still
rights.
people that aren't annexing that are still part of that water association.
Usually you transfer the water rights at the time of the annexation. It's embedded in the annexation agreement. It's separate from the subdivision review.
But the water district is outside the city's purview. I mean, it's not a city agency, so how does, is there any concern that that's not gonna happen?
Applicant might have some info for us on that one.
Typically, I would go to punt to Rob on this to deal with an infrastructure question like this, but I do know that we do transfer them. It's very common to have that embedded in our annexation agreements as a transferable of water rights to
Yeah.
the local municipality, and then that municipality then provides that service.
But this is one of maybe 20 people in that,
Yeah, there's not
that
much
are members
left.
of that district, so I don't know how that would work exactly, but.
I do know we've had other annexations in there that have been members of that, and I believe that water district was going to continue to remain until the last one. And
The
then
last one, and then the city gets it or something?
something along those. I don't know exactly how those agreements, once again, like maybe the applicant is well versed in that, or when Rob gets back in here, I don't know, he can comment on that.
Okay.
No, I think that was it. That's all I had.
Alrighty, thank you. Invite the applicant up. Mr. Dittman.
Good evening, Chairman Stephenson, fellow commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, for the record, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the city of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Killdeer Meadows is what we're here to talk about tonight. As Anna had said, it's an infill project located there on the south side of Killdeer. You've got Greens Ferry Road on the left, Cecil on the right, Prairie on the north, and Hope on the south. We're kind of in that infill pocket of the city that continues to fill in over time. It's a 5-acre piece that you can see highlighted there in black. Here's the city's zoning map. Everything in yellow is zoned R1. We annexed this a couple months ago in front of you guys, came in as R1 zoning. We have signed the development agreement and the annexation agreement and given that to John and staff, and that's going in front of council January, February-ish, I think is the date. So that's all been signed. That is all moving forward. Yes, sometimes we do bring annexation and subdivision together at the same time, and it wasn't because I didn't do my homework, Ross, but thank you. It just, timing-wise, this is how this one worked out. We did the annexation, and now we're here at the subdivision. We knew that the annexation was going to take some time to get in front of council, so we weren't in too much of a hurry to get it done. But it is an infill project. We are bringing it in as R1. It matches everything that's there. It's that pocket of county that is infilling. The subdivision review criteria, they talked about it in the last hearing. Anna went through it. I'm not going to go through it unless you guys have specific questions about any of it, but we do meet all 6 of those requirements. In our opinion, staff, I think, feels the same way. Here's a copy of the subdivision plan. It's pretty simple. You've got Killdeer on the north side, you've got Laverne Lane on the south side, and one street going north-south. It's a 5-acre piece. There's really not much more you can do with it other than what we've shown here. Sewer and water is available to it. Water is Ross Point Water District, and to answer the question, actually city code, and it's in the annexation agreement, requires that we dedicate any water rights that we may have to a municipal water system. It's also in the annexation agreement that we did with the district, that we have to dedicate those water rights to them. So it's covered actually twice, once by the city and once by Ross Point Water District.
Okay.
So that will be taken care of with the annexation through Ross Point, that we've been through that process. I went in front of their board, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and had the annexation in front of them. So we've gone through that process. So that box has been checked as well. Sewer is the city of Post Falls. There is sewer available in Killdeer and in Laverne there. Pretty straightforward infill subdivision request, 18 lots, 5 acres. Any questions for me?
Questions?
Just kind of a overall question. When you have a street that's dead ending, like in this one, to the east, it's dead ending into another parcel that's not part of the development, what does the fire department do in terms of when they get involved? Do they require you to have a turnaround there?
So a
or
couple
something,
things.
or
So
how
one
does that work?
is city code actually requires the 2 and 3 policy that we do extend streets to
Yes.
serve future parcels. That's a requirement from the city. From a fire department standpoint, is any street that's longer than 150 feet in length does require a turnaround.
Oh, okay.
This section, so from the north-south street to the end of that is less than 150, doesn't meet that criteria to have either a hammerhead or a turnaround from the fire department standard.
Okay.
So,
Just a question.
yep. But that's all been vetted. Fire chief has looked at this and approved it as well. So. Anything else for me? Thank you.
Thanks. Public testimony? All right, Killdeer Meadows, not wishing to speak, neutral. Jim Ruff, I think, 3684 North Britton Road. Continue to encourage Planning Commission to find a way to maintain the back row of mature pasture trees for the policy 71 and goal 1. Oh, no, nice to have the green belt, makes common sense. Okay. Right? Just the one? Mr. Dittman, you want to speak to that? I know this was brought up in the other hearing.
It was brought up, again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering for the record. It was brought up at the annexation, if you guys remember. I don't really have a good picture of it. So this was an old tree farm, if you guys remember. We talked about that at the annexation. There is, my cursor will cooperate, there's a row of mature trees that are literally on the fence line, and then there's another row of them. The rest of the trees out there were either burlap wrapped or were in buckets, were not viable, were not salvageable. We did work with the urban forester, Preston. As a matter of fact, the city did actually ask us if they could have some of the trees. So I think the city went out there and took 6 of those big mature trees. Preston and his crew did for some city projects, so we worked with them on that. I have talked at length with the developer about it. That row of trees that is along that rear fence line, our intention is to save those to the best of our ability. Obviously, any trees that are out in the right of way or that need to be removed for utilities and whatnot will be. But those trees that are along the rear property line, it's our intention to save those, again, to the best of our ability that we can. So it's a benefit to our project. It's a benefit to the neighbors. Sure. They are mature trees. They're good-looking trees. So we want to save them.
Cool. All right. Thank you. All right. Close out the hearing.
Okay, Commissioners, turning to the review criteria for subdivision 24-8, Killdeer Meadows. Number 1, considering whether definite provision has been made for a water supply system that is adequate in terms of quantity and quality for the subdivision proposed.
Yeah, there's a Ross Point will serve letter
Yep.
in the staff report.
Thank you. Number 2, same question for an adequate public sewage system and that can accommodate the proposed sewer flows.
Yes,
City-
Post Falls.
City system, it's already there?
Yep.
City will serve. Thank you. Number 3, the proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Yeah, this is just the one street, but it's going to start adding that connectivity for this infill project.
I appreciate that it ties into what's there, too.
Mm-hmm. And what will be there in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
And it sounds like there was no impacts proposed on Killdeer Avenue. And it proposes that alignment for Luverne Lane as well. Number 4, any testimony about proposed soil or topographical hazards?
None.
None were identified.
None identified. I'm waiting for the hearing when one is identified.
Wouldn't it be?
It's been like a
We've had a
year.
couple, but
There was a big one,
they're few and far between.
the
Was
one,
that
the
the
one
one with
on
the-
Pleasant View. You guys
Yeah.
seen that? Yeah,
With rocks?
there was a dump. There was an old
Yeah.
dump there.
They put old
Did you-
tires or
Have you guys
something?
seen that? That just like, looks like a Superfund site now. They're digging that dump up. It's unbelievable.
Oh.
And I think it was somebody in the audience that
Yeah.
pointed out that it was there.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
I did hear about that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that. Yeah.
Unreal.
It's a good reason why we do the notice is because, yeah, you find out those things and they go and do an assessment. And
Oh my, it's a big job.
All right, number 5, the area proposed for the subdivision is zoned for the proposed use and conforms to the other requirements found in the code.
It isn't presently, but when it's coming into the city, that makes a lot of sense because everything around it is already zoned R1, so.
Yep.
Conforms to requirements of Title 17 and 18, so R1.
And I believe the annexation request in our zoning recommendation that we
Was
approved
R1.
was for an R1. So,
Correct.
And number 6, that the developer has made adequate plans to ensure the community bears no more than its fair share of the costs for providing services.
Yeah, the staff report talked about impact fees, the improvements for the streets and parks, and as it's developed, those will be paid.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, or would somebody like to make a motion?
You wanted to make a motion, didn't you?
Sure. So I move to approve, let's see, Killdeer Meadows subdivision, file number SUBD-24-8, finding that it meets the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code 17.12.060H, as outlined in our deliberations and subject to the conditions. How many conditions did we have?
There were 8 or 10.
1 through 9.
Subject to the
9.
9 conditions presented by the city staff, and contained in the staff report. And direct staff to prepare a written, reasoned decision.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Oh,
Commissioner Schreiber, could I have you maybe amend your motion to also add in the condition that it's contingent upon annexation by the city council?
Okay? Yeah,
That would help.
so to my motion, I would amend that to be conditioned on annexation into the city.
Thank you.
thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Bolton?
Yes.
Wilhelm?
Yes.
Stephenson?
Yes.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Schreiber?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda, administrative or staff reports.
There's none.
Commissioner comments
For the good of the order.
for the good of the order. I had a question.
What was this?
This was talked about earlier.
Oh,
We're good. February meeting, are you waiting on anybody to get back to you on 1 or 2 meetings? Could we knock that out now?
Wait, what?
Well, I think we got everybody's comments and we decided to do 2 meetings.
Okay. And that's why that other email went out today to pick.
Yeah, that's why the one went out as
Okay.
far as, yeah.
So if you guys haven't checked your email, there's a time for a second meeting in February.
Okay.
So we're gonna split those up because there was like 4 hearings, right?
Yes.
So
I was gonna say, I don't think I've seen that, so I must have missed it. Oh,
I don't think I
it
saw
was
it
this
either.
afternoon, so.
oh,
Do we have a January meeting on the calendar?
The January meeting,
Talk about that one again. Just
you want to talk
Yeah,
about
the
that?
January
just again?
meeting, the 14th, we didn't have a public hearing that met the cutoff period for us to do notifications. So it created an opportunity for us to do a workshop.
Okay.
There's a couple workshops that could add some value. One was the land use training workshop, and we also needed to get the impact fee update workshop. It was intended to come in this December, it wasn't able to make it, so we're looking at January. So that's what the discussion was at the kickoff of this meeting, which you weren't here quite
just
yet
missed
for.
it. Yep.
But that's what we discuss is, do we want to have one long meeting where we go over all of that in at that 14th? Or do we want to split it up? And so we're going to send out another doodle poll type query to get some answers, or an email to get some responses.
So one
I
is,
think one's fine as long as we have the customary refreshments provided by legal staff.
And overtime.
I second that. So the land use training, I don't think that Commissioner Wilhelm or Commissioner Schreiber has had that. We've done it, it's an annual thing that we put on. It's usually about a 2-hour presentation on land use considerations, what we look at for the criteria and everything else. And then that on top of the second half of the impact fee meeting, I was concerned that that might be a longer meeting. If you guys want to power through it, I don't care. I'm just trying to be cognizant of your time.
So we could be looking at 3.5, 4 hours.
Well, John was thinking maybe start at 5, go to 6:30 for the impact, take a quick break, and then power through into the land use training. But like I said, I wanted to be.
Do land use second.
Because my concern is after 4 hours of training, it doesn't help much at some point. It's just all just, so.
We can bring pillows.
You guys can make the decision now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, now that I thought about it,
I just wanted you to have the options.
I'm fine doing one, whatever you guys wanna go.
Or if you want to respond via doodle poll, since John's already set it up, that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's
we
the
don't have Vicky
background-
Joe and we
that's the
don't have
background
Ray,
for
so
that.
we still gotta reach out to them anyways.
Sure.
So, all right, yeah, just reach out and.
You
we'll get it
probably
done.
would do some sort of food, and probably not the refreshments you were thinking of off the top of your head, but there would be some refreshments there. Sorry,
enough.
sorry.
Fair enough.
Treated
Water
wastewater.
from the treatment.
Class A.
Purple.
Can I request
some
a
purple
copy
pipe
of
water.
Yeah,
this?
Commissioner Schreiber, I meant to get one printed for you.
Okay.
It's in the works. We have to print it
problem.
and then assemble it and everything else. I meant to get it for you today, but.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, it's in the works.
All right. Any other comments? Anybody like to make the final motion of the night?
Move to adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
Okay.
Aye.